Welcome to Mountaineer Rants. This is our Baylor review show. A little bit later than normal, but I'm glad you all hung in there with us, and hopefully you'll see it and you'll watch this with us.
Thursday night, the Mountaineers knocked off Baylor 43-40 in a real thriller of a ball game. If you didn't get a chance to see it, it was tied going into the fourth quarter. I believe we predicted it would be a fourth quarter win.
I remember somebody saying something that we'd keep it close and run the ball well, and we'd win it in the fourth. That's what I remember. I don't know. Maybe you can go back and look at the other video.
Mountaineers moved right down the field in the fourth quarter and kicked a field goal. Baylor had the ball at the tail end for about less than a minute and couldn't move it against our defense.
And then the backup quarterback was clueless, and we just completely befuddled him in that last drive. So
Baylor scored 3 in the first quarter and then 17 unanswered points in the second quarter for 21 points in the second quarter, 7 in the third quarter, and 9 in the fourth for a total of 40 points. Mountaineers were 7, 10, 14, and 12 for 43 points. The highlights of the game probably was Baylor scored a touchdown and Mr. Sills blocked the extra point, and Mountaineer
true freshman Jacoby Spells picks that ball up and takes it back for 2 points. So is that awesome?
So instead of getting 7, they get 6, and then we put on 2, and it just left them kind of off balance.
In my opinion, the game turned when Sean Martin got his hand on their quarterback shape, and he dropped the ball. Jasir Cox picked it up and ran for a touchdown. At that point, they were still ahead 17-10. We get the ball and score on defense, and it's tied, and all of a sudden we think we can play with them because it looked a little sour at one point, if you remember, in that game.
Again, for those of you that didn't see it, West Virginia went down the field and put in 7. Baylor came back with 3, 7, and 7. West Virginia got another 3 points and then another 7. And at that point, it was tied 17 all going into the. But Baylor put in another 7 right before half, and they went ahead in half ahead of us. We came out in the second half and knocked out their quarterback. And
targeting call.
Got a targeting
Andrew
call.
Wilson Lamp got thrown out, and he won't play in the first half against Texas Tech. It was targeting, but it's hard to hold up when those guys slide.
I don't think the kid meant it, but it was a slide, and he did hit him under the rule. So we held them. We got the ball back and scored and tied it at 24 all early in the second half. We were tied 31 all at the end of the third quarter. And after the extra point return, they were up 37-31.
And then we got the 2 and made it 37-33.
37-33.
And that was huge because if it's 38-31 and they kick that extra point, then when we score, we just tie it. But when we got the ball and went down and scored now we got the lead because we got that 2-point conversion.
The exciting part in the fourth quarter included Baylor threatening inside our 30, fumbling the ball away, and West Virginia celebrating because that might have been a killer. We had 2 or 3 tries, and then we promptly threw an interception.
Gave it right back to him.
Gave it right back to him.
You know, in a series before that, we had an interception with Aubrey Burks. We pressured the quarterback. He threw an ill-advised pass, and Burks made that interception, and you thought you're going to put the game away, but we still could not put that game away.
Well, let's talk about the Hard Luck Bears because I think Baylor's a pretty good team. They're now 3-3. They a week ago against Oklahoma State, they had a safety against them and a kickoff return for a touchdown. Against West Virginia, they had fumbles and then they had a blocked missed PAT that went for a touchdown. They had 4 turnovers against West Virginia, and they now have more losses than they had all last season.
Somebody said that they're doing things this year like we used to do this year and last year. And it's true. They're making mistakes, and other teams are capitalizing. competition is very close in this conference this year.
They do have some quality, though, and they had, for example, their receiver Gavin Holmes had 7 catches for 210 yards, which was a personal high for him. They had 13 touchdowns this year from 25 yards or more out.
Explosive.
And 2 of those came in the first half against West Virginia. So these are people that will hit you from a distance. It makes them an exciting team. They didn't run the ball well.
No.
They had their running backs, and including their quarterback, ran for 57, 44, 25, 24, and 20 yards. So nobody was running, but I think that's a tribute to West Virginia.
I think we played pretty well. We came in thinking they were going to run the ball on us, and they did very similar to what they did against us last year down there. When we game planned to come in to stop the run, they threw it all over the yard, and boy, they did gouge us throwing the ball in the first half. But we stopped their running game. They did not control the game running the ball. Did we stop it completely? No, but they did not. We're not able to control the game.
And this was a team that had a highly touted offensive line.
Very, very. It is a very good offensive line.
So now their quarterback Chapin, the one that got injured, he had 326 yards passing before the first drive of the second half.
Yeah.
Very good quarterback.
There's some that say if he hadn't have got hurt, we wouldn't have won the game. I don't know about that, and we'll never know.
Baylor had 590 total yards. West Virginia only had 500, but we still won. So they moved the ball up and down the field. Now let's praise the Mountaineers, because my big confusion this year and this game is who to praise first and who to praise the most. I feel free to disagree with me, but I was very impressed with our receivers. Our receivers did an excellent job, especially Prather.
Caden Prather stands out head and shoulders above everybody else, in my opinion.
They spent a lot of time stopping our quote number 1 and number 2, Bryce Ford Wheaton and Sam James. And Prather stepped up. He caught passes everywhere, and he ran like a man afterwards. I was pretty impressed with our runners. Our runners are proving to be too good for a highly respected defensive line on Baylor. Baylor is very physical, but our runners, we didn't even have Donaldson,
who's probably our best runner. Yeah, C.J. Donaldson's been so far.
We had Mathis and Johnson, and both of them ran very well.
Remember, I'll go on record saying this. Tony Mathis ran in that football game like he did last year. And one of the coaches said he was decisive, and I think that's a huge difference. He didn't dance. He didn't try to move his feet. He just went after it. And my goodness, when that guy runs like that, he's big and strong too. And Justin Johnson comes at you hard too. Now, I was very impressed with our running backs, but there were holes to run through though too.
There were holes to run through. That's the next thing I would praise. I think our offensive line is excellent. We have one of the better offensive lines than we've had in years. And even when Baylor did a good job jamming it up, and they did because they're pretty solid, our running backs knew to pull out and go around wide, and it had to be frustrating for Baylor. They just couldn't stop us.
By the way, did you know that our offensive line is ranked in the top 25 and the least amount of sacks allowed? We've only allowed 8 sacks in 6 games. And they're also in the top 25 in yards per carry on rushing the ball. Right. It wasn't until not too long ago people were saying that Matt Moore, our offensive line coach, should be fired.
Yeah, because
I remember that somewhere.
10,
but be a little patient. And now look at what we got going on. That was an offensive line played very well against a very good defense.
Against a top-ranked team, a top-quality team with a good defensive line. JT, I didn't think was super, but he was solid, and we'll talk a little more about that. He moved the ball around well. He has a good pocket presence. One of the reasons he doesn't get sacked is he has a sense of what's going on. He gets rid of the ball, and he spreads it around to people.
He had that one pass to James where he threw it about 25 yards down to the sideline, and he dropped it right in on his hands, right on the sideline, over Baylor players. I was like, that is as good as I've ever seen.
Our defensive secondary was not as bad as they had been. I thought they gave up a lot. They were out of position and all that, but they were improving. I was even impressed with them. They were swarming to the ball. They were tackling better. There's still one or two that still don't tackle well, but they're getting better on that. Our defensive line was very
I
impressive.
was
We
happy with the
shut
line.
them down on their running game, and I think even our special teams looked better.
Oh,
We
yeah.
started the game out with a fumbled kick, but we caught it right
We
back
caught it,
up
yeah.
again.
It's like we changed Reese Smith to Preston Fox, and he drops the ball too, but it came back to Fox. Somebody keeps saying put Garrett Green back there to return punts. I'm going to say it again.
They're not listening to us. But
I
Mr.
don't. Maybe he
Green
wouldn't
was
catch
in
it.
the game.
He was.
We
He caught a
I'm-
pass.
I'm not even sure why we're using him like that, but we are. But I'd like to see him run back on special teams. The difference were turnovers, blocked kick, interceptions, fumbles, and heads-up football, because the Mountaineers, I don't think they'd gotten a fumble prior to this game, or if they did, it was like one.
Yeah.
But they fought for fumbles this time, and they were fighting for interceptions in the ball. I just saw an energy there that I hadn't seen before. And that's not to take anything away from Baylor. Baylor had gotten the rap for not having a lot of energy, but their coach came out and said they were ready to fight, and they did play like that.
they
We
did.
got a good shot out of Baylor.
Yeah,
We got their best shot.
They came in hard.
Now, on my personal notes, my personal observations, I thought we shouldn't be running the ball to the right, but they wanted to run the ball to the right. I thought our runs to the left were going to work more often, particularly if we faked into the line and then went outside, because that corner would come crashing in. We moved the ball.
I often think about that too, because we got Frazier, we got Gamitter and Milam on the left, and then we've got Nestor and Jaquay Hubbard over here. Now, Jordan White is possibly going to be back for the Texas Tech game, and I think if we ultimately get Jordan White at right guard and Doug Nestor at right tackle, you'll see us move the ball to the right a little better. But I've often wondered, why wouldn't you put Doug Nestor on the left side, so make it Frazier, Nestor, and Milam, and then completely run it to the left. However, that's just me ranting. It's different.
It's not a bad
left
idea.
guard, they're completely different. But
my point is if there was a weak spot on the line, if there was one spot that was still open for competition, it was right tackle.
Jaquay Hubbard,
and when
Brandon
we had
Yates.
the ball 4th and 2, we handed it off to Mathis to go over the right tackle,
Didn't
and
like
they
that call.
snowed us.
However, later in
the game, because Harrell and Brown are smarter than me. In the last segment, damn if they didn't run off right tackle, and Mathis blew right through the hole and right down the field. In fact, a heads-up safety is the only reason he didn't go in for a touchdown.
Yep.
I wanted them to test the outside for speed, because I thought we needed to run the end around. I thought we needed to see if we could run wide. And we never seemed to do that. We were challenging their defensive lines.
We did more of that last year than we did this year since Harold's been there, and I don't specifically know why. Maybe he's setting it up for later in the season.
We used some misdirection on tunnel screens and the like. We used them, but we'll need to do more of that against Texas Tech because they overreact, and Baylor is a little more straightforward. But I thought we might be able to run wide on them with James or Bryce Ford Wheaton on an end around, and if we did it, I didn't see it.
It didn't happen much.
They covered our, quote, best receivers of Bryce Ford Wheaton and James, and by the way, I've got kudos for those two. Ford Wheaton went up and caught several very tough passes to catch, and he came down and was tough. But he's got the ability to be NFL quality. He just runs a little inconsistent now and then. James, I wasn't a big fan of James a year or two ago.
You're still not.
But my God, he had a great game. He caught the ball and he turned around, and rather than putting up signals and goofing around, he was determined to gain extra yards. I was really impressed with the way he did it.
But a lot of underrated in that game is how they blocked down the field too. Because when Justin Johnson and Tony Mathis are going for 20, 25, you got to have some people blocking down the field, and that is your wide receivers. And there was a little bit of Preston Fox in there, but it was James, Wheaton, and Prather blocking people down the field, and that's how you get these big plays.
That's exactly. So I was very impressed with him. I was impressed with Prather as well. Before we get to that, let's talk about Mathis. Mathis ran 22 times for 163 yards. He averaged 7.4 yards a carry against Baylor. This is not Virginia Tech. This is not Townsend. This is Baylor.
His best game as a collegiate, without question. Tony Mathis' best game.
The Baylor coach was mad that they didn't tackle better, but I saw that game. Mathis was not easy to tackle. He ran decisively and he did well. And I'll give the same kind of kudos to Johnson.
I like
we
Dustin
ran
Johnson,
the delayed draw play, what we used to call the bow back under Nayland. After Bo Schembechler, because he loved that draw play. We ran the delayed draw play, and one time I think they had a mix-up. One time Johnson tripped over somebody else, but the rest of the time it was there. And on at least one occasion, they handed off the delay to Johnson. He ran right up the middle of the field through two defenders for a touchdown.
That was beautiful.
It was a beautiful call and a beautiful play against a very good defensive line. So Mathis and Johnson were great. But let's talk a little bit about JD and the receivers.
Yeah.
Prather had 8 receptions for 109 yards, and that doesn't say what he did, because he caught tough passes with people hanging on him. And when he came down with the ball, he turned and plowed upfield.
He had that one play. He caught the ball like 4 yards down the field and went forward another 6 and got the first down. I was like, this guy's a man. And this is just a sophomore.
That's right. He's just a sophomore. So you can take out our top receivers and our third receiver, who may now be whatever number he is. He's a threat too. But that's not all. James had 3 receptions for 52 yards. Wheaton had 5 receptions for 51 yards. Smith had 1 reception for 30.
And my goodness, that was a nice catch. It's the kind of ball he normally doesn't catch down the middle of the field, and he made a very nice catch on that play. Very, very pleased with that.
Aaron, another baby, he had 1 catch. He was one of 3 that were thrown at him for 6 yards. Palendi, and you've heard me complain about our tight ends, but he was only thrown at him once. He caught it.
We lost Mike O'Loughlin now, so Palendi's got to step up.
Johnson had 1 thrown to him, and he caught it for 4 yards. So Prather had 8 receptions. He missed 3 of them. James missed 3 of them. Wheaton missed 2 of them. Smith missed 2 of them. Aaron missed 2 of them. But Green, Fox, Mathis, Palendi, Johnson, they all caught every pass going through them. And that many passes to that many different people make it very hard, even for a good secondary, to keep you covered. That's the unseen part of a good quarterback and a good offensive scheme.
Right.
Because we were finding the open man and getting it to them. They can't stop everything.
It's JT Daniels. He's just so far ahead of the defense, I believe, and he knows how to read them. But the main thing is he has time to read them. Jarrett Dagey didn't have a lot of time to read defenses.
I'll give more credit as well to Brown and to Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator, because it was well called. Now, we did this without Donaldson, without Laughlin, and without Charles Woods, maybe the best cornerback in the Big 12. We have a lot of potential in this team. We went 0-2 to start the season. We've won 3 of the last 4. This team is poised to make a nice run. They never quit. And even the weak part of the team, I think, is improving. I'm very optimistic after this game.
If I was going to sum it up, I'd say very, very good job on the offensive side. Still got some holes to plug on that defensive side, but I see things happening, and I see them. But the main thing is they just kept fighting. And look at this team. Got down in Pittsburgh and fought back and tied that game, didn't win it. Got down by 11 to Kansas and fought back and tied it to go into overtime. Got down in this game 17-7 and fought back to win the game. This team plays really, really hard. They're exciting to watch. I'm on board.
I've got one more compliment to pay, and that's to me. I told you folks that we were going to win this game in the fourth quarter. We went into the fourth quarter tied, and we did win. I thought if we stayed within a score or two, JT Daniels and our receivers would move down the field, get it done, and we'd win the game. I wasn't exactly right on that. When we moved down the field, we did it with Mathis on a combination of passes and runs.
I said that we need to control the football running it. We ran for 217 yards, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's all right. I don't mind being wrong in that respect. So kudos to them. Daniels played a role. We passed the ball left and right, and we ran the ball left and right on that last drive. But when the fourth quarter was up and we needed to get the ball, we moved right down the field and put the ball in. We did it on a field goal. We used up the clock beautifully. Some people would second guess our in-game decisions and clock management. We did it beautifully. And then our defense did it again because they had the ball with enough seconds on the clock. They used up their timeouts. They had the ball with enough seconds on the clock. All they needed was a field goal, and our defensive secondary didn't find, there was no holes. We only rushed a couple, so the defense did it. It was a team effort. I'm very proud of this team.
Their last 4 possessions, turnover, field goal, end of game. If you can stop Baylor 3 out of 4 possessions from scoring after they had already put up 37.
Now, for those of you at Baylor, I wish you all the best. I think you've got a solid team. I hope you win all the rest of your games.
I really like your coach. I like Dave Aranda. Lots of class act. He's a very good man.
I want to thank Tim Glenn from Richmond for his insight, Kathy Booth for her insight, Jim Booth also. They're in Florida. They were telling me what they thought about the game, and some of the others. And we're supposed to tell you to like and subscribe and give us your comments. We'll mention you the next time if you say something clever or if you're smarter than us.
And then look for the Texas Tech preview video coming soon.
Coming real soon.
Thank you very much.